gentlemen, my name is Logan West, and I would like to welcome you all to the Danube Institute today. We want to welcome you to the second summit on geopolitics, security, and defense. And it is my privilege right now to welcome the president of the Danube Institute, John O'Sullivan. John, thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Logan, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to open this session of the second conference of the Danube Institute on globalism. The first one ended just before the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, and we had said many and wise and interesting and different things about the possibility of that in that conference, but of course, the fact that it has now happened and had very major consequences means that we wanted to revisit the subject. And I think we've obviously second-guessed your minds because a very large number of people registered for this event. In fact, we had to stop at 165 because more people wanted to come, and the fire regulations won't let you go above a certain figure. So that is a sign of success to begin with. Another important sign of success, I think, is the distinction of the people who have agreed to speak here. Obviously, we're very delighted that President Václav Klaus is one of the guests and will be speaking later this morning. Tony Abbott, the former Australian Member of Parliament, will be speaking tomorrow. Among the other distinguished speakers, we will have Frank Furedi, who is well known, of course, to a Hungarian audience, Neil Ferguson, the historian, who will be making a virtual appearance, John Venable of the Heritage Foundation. I want to say I'm delighted that John and his colleagues have been able to stay here in quite large numbers to contribute to our debates. Ambassador Rekha Semakani, who is also a good friend of the Institute. And the rules of the game here are that we're all on the record. In fact, we will be recording the proceedings in the main, and we hope that they will receive, as our last conference of this kind did, a much larger audience than actually is present here through the medium of podcasts and the internet. I want to be as brief as possible. We have a lot of speakers. We have a crowded program, even though it's over 2 days. And the task of keeping the program or the train on the railway track moving along is something we are very aware of. Now, having said that, it's my great pleasure to say that we can welcome Krisztina Varju, the Deputy Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, on behalf of the Hungarian government and the Hungarian Foreign Office. I would like to invite you, Ms. Varju, to come to the podium. And after you, the president of the Batthyány Foundation, our colleague and friend, Dr. Tamás Dezső, who is both an academic expert in a number of fields. I think I might almost say an academic statesman, given the number of academic roles he actually pursues and is given in this country. So I won't hold you up any longer. I will first of all invite Deputy State Secretary Varju to come and address us, and after her, I think Dr. Dezső will take the stage. Minister.
Dear Mr. President, Excellencies, dear ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by welcoming you all in the name of the Hungarian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and by saying thank you to the organizers, the Danube Institute and the Batthyány Lajos Foundation, for inviting me to address this distinguished audience today. On this occasion, we will talk about geopolitics. This word is now increasingly in use in public discourse, and it is no surprise, as developments are increasingly defined by geopolitics itself, we need to talk about geopolitics more. So let us take a glance on some of the major features of how geopolitics have changed around us in the past decades and how Hungary reacted to it. The geopolitics of the Cold War was a heavy burden for Hungary. As a smaller country and a frontline state with shattered sovereignty, our country could not defend its national interest throughout the decades of the Cold War. Due to the overwhelming influence of the Soviet Union, Hungary could not seize the opportunities offered by an unfolding globalization that geared up precisely in those years. The Cold War has, therefore, a very negative memory in our historical consciousness. After the regime change, the country learned that it had to compete in an era of geoeconomics, in which the most important trend in international relations are globalization and the increased role of international trade. Fortunately, globalization was associated with a change in the world order that was based on the quasi-hegemony of the United States and had very positive effects on our country as it managed to escape from being a frontier zone of great powers and securely anchor in the Western ally system, as well as open up to global markets and partnerships. In recent years, however, the world order is changing yet again. The West has lost its overwhelming influence. Things are happening that were once considered impossible, especially in light of the global shock caused by the pandemic. Who would have thought that European countries would desperately try to mend ties with China, India, Qatar, Azerbaijan, or Algeria to safeguard their supply system, let it be related to energy or health security? Who would have thought that organizations, think tanks, universities from the United Arab Emirates, China, India, Turkey would be as influential as some of the historical Western European institutions? And finally, who would have thought in 1990, for instance, that Qatar will be the host of the Football World Championship in a November-December period? The international order seems to become irrevocably multipolarized. That does not mean that the era of the West is over, but the rest is not rising any longer, it has risen. Many investor countries view this process with surprise and dismay. Some want to respond to the growing influence of emerging powers by proclaiming a new Cold War and returning the world from the age of geoeconomics to the so-called dark age of hardcore geopolitics. But how do Central Europe and Hungary face this situation? What is our outlook to today's challenges around us? We believe what is needed is not de-globalization, but some more globalization based on eye-to-eye partnerships. There is a need to a comprehensive connectivity strategy that sees the opportunity for a wise diversification of relations and not breaking off those ties. I agree with Winston Churchill's famous words, "To improve is to change. So to be perfect is to change often." We need to adapt constantly to our changing world, and after all, this is what geopolitics is really about. Sizing up the circumstances, geographical, economic, political, and so forth, and create a strategy for the country accordingly. While experiencing a brutal war in our direct neighborhood, we all thought is unimaginable to happen once again in the 21st century, witnessing challenging turbulences in the energy markets and serious uncertainties when it comes to energy security, the task is at hand to discuss thoroughly all these changes, discuss geopolitics, and have devised strategies for adapting to these new realities. I wish a fruitful discussion to all of you. Thank you very much for coming to Budapest, being with us today, and thank you for your kind attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, I feel really a great privilege to be here and greet you on the opening ceremony of a conference which we call the Second Danube Summit on Geopolitics. I would like to warmly welcome the Vice President of Iraqi Kurdistan, who is with us, Sheikh Jafar, and 5 other Peshmerga generals who joined us for this conference. They are my friends, my brothers, who fought against the ISIS, saved their land, Kurdistan, and saved the West, the Western civilization. I would like to warmly welcome His Excellency Václav Klaus, the former president of the Czech Republic, and I would like to warmly welcome our friend, the Honorable Tony Abbott, former Prime Minister of Austria, who is going to join us for this conference. I would like to express furthermore my deepest gratitude to all my colleagues at the Danube Institute. First of all, our President, John O'Sullivan, the Executive Director of the Danube Institute, István Kis, Deputy Director, Melissa O'Sullivan, David Martin-Jones, the Director of Research, who invested a lot of energy, enthusiastic work into this conference, organizing this conference, and made it possible for me to stand here and talk to you. The think tank of the Batthyány Lajos Foundation, the Danube Institute, in collaboration with the Heritage Foundation, organized the first such a conference in February, the first Danube Summit on Geopolitics, a few days before the Russian attack on Ukraine. And now we are here again to discuss what went wrong in the last 9 months and how we're going to solve this crisis. I've got some private expectations. At the end of the conference, I would like to see some steps forward, some steps towards the better understanding of the real nature of the problem, the real nature of the crisis we are facing with. And I would like to see a few steps towards the better understanding of each other's views on the future of the Western civilization. And may I close my welcome address with a passage from the Old Testament. This is going to be my motto, and I'm going to repeat it as many times as I can. From the book of Ecclesiastes. There's a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to uproot. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to tear down, and a time to build. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to scatter the stones, and a time to gather them. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search, a time to give up. A time to keep, and a time to throw away. A time to tear, and a time to mend. A time to be silent, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time for war, and a time for peace. Ladies and gentlemen, no, it is a time to speak, and hopefully a time for peace is also coming. I would like to very warmly welcome again you within the historical walls of this building, the headquarters building of the property of the Batthyány Lajos Foundation. I got a degree in archaeology, so these walls are the original walls of a Turkish bastion, Ottoman Turkish bastion. They called it the Golden Bastion, which was built by the Ottoman Turks in 1683 and destroyed by the Christian armies 3 years later in 1686 when they recaptured Buda from the Turkish rule. I would like to wish you a pleasant stay here within the historical walls of the Lonyai Villa. Thank you very much for coming.